support Jan Morgan? Who do you support? And Jan was leading this poll the entire time until 2 a.m. yesterday. And I want to say, before we talk to you, I talked to Mr. Will Teeter, the head of the college Republicans at UCA, and he said that he's not sure what happened. He said that he went to bed at midnight and Asa had a 60-40, or I'm sorry, Jan had a 60-40 lead. He woke up at 5 a.m. and it had reversed, and now Asa was in the lead. But Tim, you actually witnessed this. You were up during those wee hours of the morning. What did you witness?
I witnessed a miracle. I witnessed 1,700 people get out of bed in the dead of night at about 1 to 2 in the morning and consistently vote specifically for Asa. They didn't comment. They didn't retweet. They didn't like it. They just voted and apparently went back to bed.
1,700 people? How do you know? I mean, it was 1,700.
Roughly, this is a rough estimate based off of the voting that was there prior, and of course, it increased more than that. But in a short period of time, in just a couple of hours, there were that many votes, and again, not a single comment, a single share, or a retweet, or like. So, this is pretty suspicious. It's not normal. I'm on Twitter on the midnight shift, and I can tell you, if there's 1,700 people coming to vote anywhere, it'd be a miracle. Yeah, no, I mean, you're exactly right. And so, and there's no way for us to see the analytics that, I mean, unless of course we had access to the UCA college Republican Twitter account. I mean, I'm sure we'd have some analytics there, but you were watching this. Was this in the, I mean, was this in like how short of a span was this? You say it happened around 2 a.m., but how long did it last? I'd say it started to trickle around midnight. And then between 1 and 3 a.m., it just started hitting quick. Matter of fact, there was a time when I think there was 100, maybe even 300 vote differential in just a matter of, I want to say, 15, 20 minutes.
Wow.
So, it was that quick.
Yeah, so even that is suspicious. I mean, 300 votes in 15 minutes, and they're all for Asa.
All for Asa.
Wow.
Not a single vote the other way.
So what can you tell us about bots? What do you know about Twitter bots? Have you done any research on this as a result of what you witnessed? It's just very weird anomaly here.
Well, again, there's sites out there that will absolutely take your money in favor of, sending you a whole bunch of bots to vote for you in polls. I mean, I'm not going to name any websites specifically, but they're out there. And I imagine somebody, I'm not, accusing anyone, whether it be the UCA or anyone else, but somebody did it. And I'm sure it wasn't a fan of Jan.
Yeah, I mean, so you're convinced. Like, I mean,
I'm convinced.
You're in the tech world
about it.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I was saying I'm absolutely convinced that somebody went ahead and purchased a couple of thousand votes on one of these websites, and they decided to, start doing it late at night where they thought maybe they could get away with nobody noticing it. Which, of course, is even more awkward because in the middle of the night, there is nobody to vote.
Yeah, so how many followers, roundabouts, does the UCA College Republican Twitter handle have?
I think it was in the 100 or 2 last I looked. Maybe not even that high, but it was a very small amount, which is, again, if you look at the retweets and the likes on that particular account or that particular poll, they're pretty minimal for having that much action. If you look at the average poll that gets 3,000 votes, it usually has way more comments.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts.
and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Now, that's interesting. I didn't know this. We're up on our Facebook Live feed right now, and I've already got somebody asking the question, how did Asa do in Mississippi County last night? Did he know he was still in Arkansas? That's a good question. I didn't even know sorry, I didn't even know the governor was going to be in Mississippi County. What's funny is a week ago today, Conduit for Action, and I was there. And it was fun. It was great talking with those folks, giving them the truth. I promise you, they probably didn't get the truth last night. Hey, folks, welcome. This is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, not just, espousing conservative ideas on a campaign trail, or we actually think that those ideas should be implemented. We're building a liberty machine. We want you to be a part of that. One of the ways you can do that is to call us. Or you can text us, 870-275-9799. Got a lot of news to get through today on your morning drive here. Coming up at the top of the next hour, we're going to have a conservative future segment. We'll be talking with Mr. Mr. Kyle Boyd, rather. Kyle Boyd, and going to introduce you to him and get to talk a little bit about, conservatism in general and that sort of thing. I still haven't gotten over how good that speech was by President Donald Trump last night. I really haven't. Well, let's get to the news of the week, really. I mean, aside from the fact that this weekend you had the meltdown, really, I would call it just kind of a meltdown just in terms of with Doyle Webb and the news media and the false reporting that then gets corrected and just everything that happened. We've covered that extensively. We're going to get to that a little bit more in this hour because you have John Brummett essentially saying that Doyle Webb needs to pretend harder. John Brummett, liberal columnist, but even he is saying, look, it's obvious that Doyle Webb wants Asa to be the nominee. I mean, if you read between the lines of what he wrote, he's saying, yeah, of course, he's got to pretend like he's neutral. And that's exactly, I don't even think it's pretend. I listened to Doyle Webb give his campaign speech or give Asa Hutchinson's campaign speech to the crowd of the Northeast Arkansas Political Animals Club. I mean, you're giving Republican success in this state. You're giving the credit to Asa. Asa's the reason why people are voting for Republicans. That's not true. I mean, maybe you want it to be true if you want him to be the nominee and everything else. But anyway, listen to this. The big news of the week, obviously, is a story that we've been following for months now, a year now, which is Senator Jake Files. Senator Jake Files pleading guilty to wire fraud, pleading guilty to money laundering, and now he does say he'll resign. But look at this story. Headline, Senator Jake Files sets resignation date. Now, this is weird. Isn't this strange? Arkansas State Senator Jake Files submitted his official letter of resignation to Governor Asa Hutchinson Tuesday. Quote, it's been a privilege to represent Senate District 8 in the Arkansas Senate and to serve the citizens of Arkansas in the Arkansas General Assembly. I'm proud of the work we have done together during my tenure. Files pleaded guilty on Monday to wire fraud following an FBI investigation. Senator also pleaded guilty to money laundering and bank fraud. Please accept this as notice of my resignation from the Arkansas Senate, with my last day being Friday, February 9th, 2018. This will ensure time to tie up any loose ends, end quote. Tie up any loose ends? What does that mean? What loose ends does Jake Files have to tie up? Now, Joe, you're exactly right. Now, I haven't talked to you at all about this, but you said his last paycheck, right? Okay, his last paycheck. Okay, maybe does he owe is he owed per diem? What is he owed? And I'm saying he's not owed a dime. Not a dime. That's what I think. This man just pled guilty to taking $46,000 of taxpayer money and laundering it to himself. Why in the world would we want to give him any more money? Why would and by the way, there is a constitutional question as to whether or not he gets to set his own resignation date. When you plead guilty, if you read the Constitution of Arkansas as is, you're done. You are no longer eligible to serve the people of this state. I will refer you to Mr. Mark Johnson. He wrote a Facebook post about 20 hours ago. Mark Johnson is the chairman of the County Chairman Association, the Republican County Chairman Association. He's the chairman of that, or the president, or whatever. I think I like better just saying he's the chairman of the chairman. That to me is great. He says, I'm curious what loose ends Senator Files is wanting to tie up that would keep his resignation from being effective immediately. Could one be collecting a check from the Senate? If he did collect a check, would this be an illegal exaction? And then he cites Article 5, Section 9 of the Arkansas Constitution states, quote, no person hereafter convicted of embezzlement of public money, bribery, forgery, or other infamous crimes shall be eligible to the General Assembly or capable of holding any office or trust or profit in this state. End quote. That's pretty cut and dry, right? You admitted to stealing our money to enrich yourselves. You admitted to crimes, infamous ones, right? Wire fraud, money laundering. Now it goes on, okay? Then you can go look at the Arkansas Constitution, Article 16, Section 13. Any citizen of any county, city, or town may institute suit in behalf of himself and all others interested to protect the inhabitants thereof against the enforcement of any illegal exactions whatsoever. So what Mark Johnson is saying here is if Senator Files, who's admitted guilt, goes on to collect any more money after that, that Article 16, Section 13 is saying, hey, look, that's an illegal exaction. You can't do that. So, you know, in many ways, if he gets paid, okay, that's one thing. That's one law that's being broken. And then you have, if he continues to stay in office, which he is, that's another law. So right now, Jake Files, you can make the argument is maybe he's comfortable with it, but he's breaking the law. Who's gonna come and say, no, you're done? I'm sorry, you're done. You're over. You've admitted guilt. You're out, and cite this constitutional provision. Yeah, I mean, you could just tack this charge on to the rest, I guess. Look at some of the comments. Let's see here. David Colbert, doubt that is his loose end. Nick Wilson would be proud of Files. Mr. David Colbert, he's been on the program before. Certainly knows a lot about the corruption in the whole gambling lobby and what's going on there. Then we have a former state representative, I'm assuming, it's Jim Magnus, yeah. Jake was someone I really enjoyed serving with in the House many years ago, and I hate to see the path he has taken. But I had similar thoughts when I saw he was setting an effective date of resignation. It's like, yeah, I'm guilty. Didn't Al Franken do the same thing? And some of these other people, like, yeah, I'll resign at some. Do you know who else did it? Jim Guy Tucker. You know, he said he was in his whole situation. He was like, I'll resign 3 months from now. And then, of course, he tried to stay in office. Technically, he shouldn't have been able to do that. I was talking to some people yesterday. He shouldn't have been able to just wait 3 months. You know, he should have been gone immediately. I had similar thoughts when I saw he was setting an effective date of resignation. Article 5, Section 9 seems clear. He is already ineligible. You're ineligible. He is not eligible until February 9th. Let's see. And whatever loose ends there may be, he is incapable of tying them up at this point. Then you got other people saying great questions. Let's see here. What is this one? Increasing laws like the internet tax. Oh, wow. Kenny. Kenneth Wallace, that Asa wanted to keep this crook in office so he could pass more government increasing laws like the internet tax and funding for Arkansas Obamacare Medicaid expansion. And look at Josh Waters here. He says that he agrees. He writes, "Agree, Mark made this same post today. He is not eligible to be senator right now, and yet he is." Think about that. According to the Constitution, he's not eligible to be a senator, and yet he is still a senator. And he's getting to set his own resignation in 8 days. Will he get one last paycheck, mileage per diem for a committee meeting? But now with sovereign immunity, are illegal exaction lawsuits even allowed? What a mess. Because we couldn't sue the government right now because they've now been said we don't have the right to do that as Arkansans. He should have resigned last summer to have avoided all of this, and it would have allowed the people of Fort Smith to have representation during the fiscal session. And that is exactly right. And that's what I've been telling you for a long, long time. Think about this in this whole grand scheme of things. There's now talk of a special election to fill the vacancy of Senator Jake Files coming up here in 8 days or whatever. There's talk of it. He hasn't resigned yet, so who knows? It's extremely weird because Matt Pitch, State Representative Matt Pitch, who has been anointed to take over the mantle of Jake Files, and is accepted into the good old boy system. He cannot run for the special election because he's a state representative, and you can't do that because then you have to have another special election, and it would just cascade. It's to prevent a cascading of cascade effect of special elections. But this is only to fill out the rest of the term. If you have a special election for the citizens of Fort Smith District 8, you're only talking about till the next January, a year from now. You're talking about having a special election whenever that is, a month, 2 months, 3 months. And so you're really only talking about, 3/4 of the year left to finish it out. And so then they're saying there's going to be the general election for for the next term, the next 4-year term, and they're saying that Matt Pitch can run for that one. This is what I've been told. It's very strange. You almost would say, okay, well, would it be a waste of money to have a special election, or would it not? Or the person that runs in the special election, can they then run in the general election to maintain their tenure? And anyway, there's some of this is going to be very interesting to see how it shakes out. I think they were holding on as long as they could, and I think they wanted. I mean, if you look at it in terms of if they had a special election last year, you'd already have an established senator, and that established senator would not be Matt Pitch, and then it would be very easy for that person to file for re-election next November, and Matt Pitch could try to win if he wanted to. He could run in that one, but you understand, it's really about, I think, trying to. Here we have a lot of incumbents in the establishment trying to. They understand what the hurdle, the disadvantage of running against an incumbent is, even if they've only been in office a few months. In this case, it'll be a very small amount of time. I'm telling you, my prediction on all this still holds true. This was all done. Jake Files didn't resign in many because they were trying to avoid a special election. They're trying to play puppet master. They're trying to play chess. They're trying to make sure all their pieces are approved, anointed knights. But then you have David Ferguson. Listen to this, because he kind of validates what I'm saying. David Ferguson on this Facebook post about this whole thing being unconstitutional, Jake Files, he says, doubt it applies, but remember some case, maybe in the 80s, triggered amendments to several laws referring to convicted to add pled guilty. Perhaps delay has to do with retirement or health insurance for a family, or to further delay a special election. Now, that's interesting speculation there. Obviously, we agree on the special election, but I hadn't thought of that. Maybe he wants to delay until February the 9th so that he collects health insurance or something for his family because, he's potentially going away for a while. Is he going away for a while, though? That's the next thing. Is Jake Files really going to be going away anywhere? I mean, some people have called me and they have said, these charges, if you look at these charges and you're talking about wire fraud, money laundering, bank fraud, a lot of people who know the Marble Palace establishment and what's really going on, and they know Jake Files, they're saying, from what I've heard, it seems like they could have gotten Jake Files for a lot more than these 3 charges. So, you sit down and there's a big difference between, how long you want to go to jail. You want to go to jail for 4 years? You want to go to jail for 18 months? Well, which one would you pick? Well, if you go down the 18-month road, the government's going to need a little something. You know what I mean? They're going to need a little cooperation, and that is what everyone's speculating about. Has he cooperated with the feds, or is he cooperating, and is he bringing more information? Is he going to testify against other individuals who are soon to be indicted? That seems to be, the question on a lot of people's minds. And, I think panic. I think some people, that would describe some of their feelings as panic, not to mention they're now another vote shy of reauthorizing the funding for Arkansas Works. And some people I talk to, they honestly don't know what they're going to do. And if they don't know what they're going to do, if they don't do another unconstitutional line item veto, if Asa can't pull another one of those off, they will start to demagogue, and they will sound just like Democrats. They will claim that killing Arkansas Works will throw people out of nursing homes. Mark my words. We've got to go to break. Back in just a moment.
Bob Maloney here from ASA News, The Parrot. Breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. Over now to our new on-site reporter, Susan Shenanigans. Susan?
Thanks, Bob. The governor has just announced that a Blue Ribbon Task Force is to be formed.
Today, I'm asking your support for a Blue Ribbon Legislative Task Force to be created and directed to recommend further reform.
Now we go live to the chamber to listen in for more information on the task force.
I hereby call this session into order. First on the agenda for today is the formation of the Blue Ribbon Task Force. Is there anyone who would like to give their thoughts on the task force?
Yes, as someone who's deeply conservative, why is the governor choosing the color blue for this task force? Sounds like he's really a Democrat loyalist. Why not a red ribbon to prove he's a true conservative?
Well, I represent Walmart, and we agree with the color of the task force ribbon. The color blue is best consistent with the Walmart brand.
I object to this choice. Blue is the wrong color ribbon for this task force.
Well, who are you?
I am Mr. P.C. Wrights, and I represent Target, and we want the ribbon to be red, not blue.
Hold it right there. This seems like a tough decision. Why not ask the governor to call a special session at a later date for an important decision as this?
I think this is something worth talking about. I motion that we decide the color of the ribbon today.
I second it. Fine. We can decide it now. Does anyone have any other suggestions for the color of the ribbon?
I think the color should be white.
Whoa. Hold on. Definitely not white.
I agree with Mr. PC Wrights. Maybe we should choose green for the farmers.
You like the color green because you are a farmer. I think it should be purple, so we can display how Arkansas is an extremely moderate state.
Why are we even discussing this? Shouldn't we be talking about tax reform instead of wasting time with this?
Well, the people have spoken. They believe this is worth talking about, so we are deciding this now.
Excuse me, sir, but shouldn't the color of the ribbon be rainbow to include all types of people?
Please, silence your phones.
I just received a call from Walmart HQ, and they agree with, what was your name again? My name is Fabulous. They agree with Fabulous that the color should be rainbow.
Target concurs with the decision of it being rainbow-colored ribbon.
Is there a motion to make the ribbon rainbow-colored?
I motion to make the color rainbow.
I second the motion. The motion carries because I said so.
The committee will now vote and not be on record to keep the people in the dark. Back to you, Bob.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you for listening to ASA News, The Parrot. Next up, there are reports of a gorilla on top of the Capitol Dome demanding massive sums of taxpayer cash. His name? Medicaid expansion.
PHP Parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So I had plans to add one more layer to the Doyle Webb, controversy over the weekend. The media, did he say, handily defeat? Of course, we know he didn't say that Asa would handily defeat Jan Morgan. That was a misquote. But then, of course, we did. I feel like, laid out a pretty convincing timeline where Doyle has shown favoritism, but I know people are going to disagree with that. And that's fine. But one thing I didn't get to this next layer. But John Brummett did. I was going to go there, but I just didn't get to it in our Monday coverage and then our coverage yesterday. We didn't really talk about it much Tuesday. But Brummett has a piece online, an opinion piece. The goddess grumbles. She's talking, and he's talking about, quote, the gun goddess. That's how he refers to Jan Morgan in many of his pieces. And because, because Jan Morgan is a very well-respected person when it comes to advocating for Second Amendment rights all across the country. So here we go down here, though. Listen to this. The governor is the head of the party Webb formerly heads. This is true. This is true. When they have their little meetings down there, it is establishment as establishment gets. So the governor is essentially the head, is what John Brummett writes here. The head of the party. Asa Hutchinson is the head of the party. Asa's establishment. And Doyle Webb's establishment. He can maybe hope that he's not, but he is. He's given Asa Hutchinson campaign talking points and speeches about how great the Republicans are. Okay, that's what he's doing, showing favoritism. But listen to this: the governor being the head of the party Webb formerly heads, the governor has bestowed cushy state jobs on Webb's wife and sister-in-law. So who do you think he's for? That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Who do you think Doyle Webb's for? Go to the next article. Monday, December 4th, Governor Asa Hutchinson named Barbara Webb to fill vacant judgeship in Saline County. Who do you think Doyle Webb's pulling for? Who do you think he wants? Who do you think, honestly, if we are in Realville, who do you think Doyle wants to be the Republican nominee? Jan Morgan or Asa, who's given his wife and sister-in-law jobs? Come on now. We got to go to break. Back in just a moment.
Way more shares and retweets, and especially if you're going to get in 3 hours at any given point, an influx of 15 to 1,700 votes, you're always going to have people sharing it, retweeting it, and definitely commenting on it. If you look at the poll thread, you can barely find a single complimentary comment towards Asa. So why wouldn't, out of 2,000 votes or plus to Asa, why wouldn't anybody leave a positive comment on that particular poll for him? It's a miracle. It really is.
Yeah, so I see Citizens for Trump tweets this, I guess, 3:38 a.m. On the 29th of January. We'd really like to know how Jan Morgan was winning by 63% earlier this evening and has been winning by double digits since the poll started. Then miraculously, over 1,000 votes came through for Asa Hutchinson during Twitter's deadest time. Crazy coincidence? We think not. So you're exactly right. Now there's Asa Hutchinson defenders that have been, arguing with you, calling you a conspiracy theorist.
He happened to get me on one fact. The only fact, the check mark. He said, well, that doesn't mean she's winning, and he's right. It meant that's who we voted for. But other than that one thing, and he tried to stick on that one fact. And I asked several times over and over, what about all the other facts, including, dead of night, this many votes, no retweets, no likes. And, of course, they wouldn't address that at all.
Mm-hmm. No retweets, no likes. We're expected to...
No comments.
Yeah, we're expected to believe... Go back up to the poll, Joe. Scroll back up to the poll real quick. Because, all right, the final results, okay, like I said, Jan was winning by 63%. Asa allegedly ends up... the poll shows he wins 56%, 44%. And the timing of this was this had been going for 5 days, and basically by 5 a.m. the poll was going to be over in 8 hours. And so there was a total vote count of 3,344 votes, and you're saying roughly 1,700 of those came in the dead of the night, and they all voted for Asa, and they did nothing else. They didn't participate, they didn't retweet, they didn't like, they didn't comment. They just voted and left. So the question is, can you tell me what a bot is? Is a bot an actual human being, or is it a computer program? Or, because I guarantee you every single one of the votes that voted for Jan Morgan are actual, Arkansans. Well, maybe they're outside, but they're actual human beings that actually tweet and, have their own individual personalities and thought. What can you tell us? What is a bot exactly?
Well,
the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, good morning to everyone. Welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. So, Donald Trump's plan on Dreamers. Man, did you hear what? I know no one did because it's CNN, but Jake Tapper, I saw this headline earlier. I thought that was interesting. He was like, Democrats, the Americans are dreamers too statement is very offensive to Democrats. Why? Why? Because it exposes your favoritism of people who are in violation of the law. The Democrat Party now is all about victims. That's it. Like they don't see any other way to solve problems, and they don't ever solve problems, but they don't see any other way to amass power to control you and enrich themselves than to establish a victim and an oppressor in every scenario. Every single scenario has to have a victim and then has to have an oppressor in order for them to, and that's what their politics are. And it's if you really think about it, what a depressing way to look at the world. And the only way that you have this, that you can look at the world as there's always a victim and there's always an oppressor, and the oppressor's wrong and the victim deserves, every single thing we can possibly give them. The only way that is your worldview is if you really truly believe in everybody getting the same exact thing out of life. Which, I mean, I guess you could say, well, that is communism. I mean, that's their goal, right? I mean, they want everybody to have their wealth taken and put it into one big pot and then to distribute it equally. That's their claim, but that's not the truth, because you have the leaders and the people in power, and they become the oligarchy, and they always are going to be better off than the people who are actually subject to the rules of the system. And so you can say the exact same thing about capitalism, that, yeah, there are people who are really, really good at doing things are better at doing certain things in this industry or that industry than other people, and they do very well for themselves. It says either system, but see, one system, neither system is perfect in terms of, equity. But we found in history that when you have that equity as your goal, a lot of people end up dying or starving to death or being murdered. I just think, like, this whole thing with the Dreamers and the immigration, this is the new victim. Here we've identified our new victim population. They're victims because their parents broke the law, right? And they're dreamers. And Donald Trump basically, which he's really good at, taking the name that's attributed to their victim group and switching it on itself in the State of the Union and said, Americans are dreamers too. Now, I know he didn't mean, well, Americans are victims too. I know he didn't mean that, but that's how they took it. Oh, he's stealing our victim label. Though that's our victimhood label. You can't use our victimhood label. Dreamers is our victim label. You can't say that the average American are dreamers too. Well, he did. I'm not surprised at all that it flew all over them, that they couldn't stand him doing that. But what he was doing was illustrating the fact, and throughout his speech, in the words that he said, was, hey, I am doing everything I can. When I make a decision, I analyze it based on what is best for Americans. All Americans. And that's refreshing. Now, that being said, okay, there are many conservatives who are upset with the president's immigration proposal, upset in the fact that we're not, in the proposal, if it were to go through, we're not getting everything that we want, right? You're going to allow 1.8 million people to stay here and then to have a pathway to citizenship over the next 10 to 12 years. Which, you know what, if you're you could make it the argument that if you are a Democrat, you'd want that because you really want Donald Trump to get the credit for this. Me, for one, I think a lot of these are just Democrat votes in waiting, but maybe not. Maybe not in 10 to 12 years. Maybe they're not going to be. That's the thing. And that maybe is why Democrats really don't like the idea of 10 to 12 years. They'd rather them be legalized today and vote tomorrow. Interesting stuff, though, right? Let's listen to it, shall we? This is the president. We're going to get what I'm going to tell you. There's a great story that analyzes our Arkansas congressional delegation, our 2 senators and four congressmen. Our Arkansas delegation's position on this. I'm going to get to that next. But first, let's actually listen to what Donald Trump said in the State of the Union address, the 4 pillars of immigration reform. He said this.
In recent months, my administration has met extensively with both Democrats and Republicans to craft a bipartisan approach to immigration reform. Based on these discussions, we presented Congress with a detailed proposal that should be supported by both parties as a fair compromise, one where nobody gets everything they want, but where our country gets the critical reforms it needs and must have.
Stop for a second. This is what's interesting to me. The Democrats, when the Tea Party came in 2010, They were so upset because the Democrats would run to the nearest camera and they would say, they just won't compromise. They refuse to compromise. They have such a dogmatic stance. Blah, 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 blah. And yet, here is an example of a compromise. I mean, a real compromise, if you think about it. Because Donald Trump is right. The conservative right, they're not getting everything they want here. Now, I mean, do we want, do we want amnesty? No. Do you want a border patrol? Do you want a pathway to citizenship? A lot of people, no. But there's some that say, yeah, okay, do we want a border wall? Yes. Are we getting that? But here's the thing. They're getting the amnesty. The amnesty was in the campaign. That's what they're getting. That's the compromise. You know what that's a huge deal. You're getting amnesty. Here is your compromise. But we want a border wall. We don't want them to bring their whole family here. We want to end the lottery system and chain migration because, it's a reasonable thing to do. And they're saying no. And it's like, okay, well, you're getting a giant thing here that you want. You're getting a thing here Republicans said they would never do again because when Reagan did this, they didn't ever secure the border. They never did secure the border. We said, okay, we're going to give you amnesty and secure the border later. The question here is, do you think Donald Trump, if he gets the wall, if they give him that, do you believe that Donald Trump will see it through? I mean, the guy is a builder. I don't know. I hope so. We keep going here.
Here are the 4 pillars of our plan. The first pillar of our framework generously offers a path to citizenship for 1.8 million illegal immigrants who were brought here by their parents at a young age. That covers almost 3 times more people than the previous administration covered.
Look at the faces on those Democrats. Stop for a second, Joe. Those faces on the Democrats are like it's like they're eating, a nice way to say this is just a sandwich made of dirt. They do not like that. You're pointing out that you're being. See, this is the real rub here. They don't want a Republican president to get credit for this, and it's driving them nuts. It really is. I mean, that's the politics here on this. Whether you agree with the amnesty proposal or not, I think most of us don't. But at the same time, look at, do you agree with getting a border wall? I mean, are you willing to trade the two? That's the question. You're willing to trade the two. Oh, by the way, throw this picture of Chuck Schumer up during this whole speech. Look at this cartoon character. Look at him. This is what I was talking about yesterday. This guy looks like a comic book villain. See? I mean, the shoulder, how has he contorted his body to look like a villain? That's crazy. Look at that. Anyway. Back to the Donald Trump speech on the 4 pillars.
And work requirements and show good moral character will be able to become full citizens of the United States over a 12-year period.
Yeah, 12-year period.
The second pillar fully secures the border. That means building a great wall on the southern border, and it means hiring more heroes like CJ to keep our communities safe.
Stop for a second. Can you imagine the future if Donald Trump, once the wall is built, and I mean a giant portion of it, giving like a big speech on the wall? Can you imagine him standing on the wall? I'm just telling you, I think that you got to think that's what they're thinking. What great political optics that would be. Keep going. Yes, thank you.
Crucially, our plan closes the terrible loopholes exploited by criminals and terrorists to enter our country, and it finally ends the horrible and dangerous practice of catch and release.
Democrats, not fans.
The
Chuck
third
Schumer,
pillar
not a fan.
ends the visa lottery, a program that randomly hands out green cards without any regard for skill, merit, or the safety of American people. It's time to begin moving toward a merit-based immigration system, one that admits people who are skilled, who want to work, who will contribute to our society, and who will love and respect our country.
Boy, they didn't like that, the Democrats.
The fourth and final pillar protects the nuclear family by ending chain migration.
Stop here for a second. Notice what he said here. He says it'll protect the nuclear family, meaning if you'll be able to bring your nuclear family, your closest family, but you're not going to be able to bring, every single relative, my, cousin, twice removed or whatever. Listen. Keep going. Sorry. Democrats hate this next part, though.
Under the current broken system, a single immigrant can bring in virtually unlimited numbers of distant relatives. Under our plan, we focus on the immediate family by limiting sponsorships to spouses and minor children.
There you go. Spouses and minors. It seems humane, right? Seems reasonable. All right, stop. So that's basically the immigration plan. The Democrats don't like it. They don't like they don't like being offered amnesty for these lawbreakers. And really that's really what shows you that their whole, what I said earlier, they've got to find a victim and they've got to find an oppressor. But it's only to a point, right? It's only to a point. Because the victims are these dreamers, right? That's their argument. The victims are the dreamers. Okay, all right, we're going to take care of them for you. All right, they can now stay here. They're here. And eventually, they're going to be able to become citizens under this plan. And the Democrats are like, well, I think we'd just rather them continue to be victims. That's essentially what they're saying. If this problem were actually solved, there'd be no more victims in this particular arena. I think they need to remain victims. That's what they're saying here. Going over to what our Arkansas delegation thinks of this. Let's take a listen, or take a look. Frank Lockwood, Arkansas congressional delegation backs broad immigration approach. You see Senator Tom Cotton, his face. I'm telling you, folks, I have not felt more represented as an Arkansan in Washington, D.C., and maybe ever than Tom Cotton's immigration positions. I think a lot of us would agree with that. If we're honest, none of us even knew what chain migration was until late last year. That this was this was a specific way, and you got to know that the establishment in both parties are like, don't be telling people what chain migration is. Don't come up with this RAISE Act or stop. And now everybody knows, hey, chain migration, like, hey, there's this thing where people are able to bring their families in, and this is ridiculous. The visa lottery and the terrorists and the people that are being apprehended, the terrorist attacks coming in with the visa lottery. These are all really good reforms that are being proposed that have the American people in mind. Let's get to some quotes here in this article. Senator Tom Cotton, quote, "The president's framework is generous and humane while also being responsible. It protects those eligible for DACA who are here through no fault of their own, but it also will prevent us from ending up back here in 5 years by securing the border and putting an end to extended family chain migration. The president's willingness to grandfather everyone in the current immigrant backlog also shows he's serious about reaching a bipartisan solution. Of course, they don't want that. The Democrats want victims, and they want oppressors, and they want to use that to maintain political power. It's encouraging to see the White House's involvement. This is according to Senator John Bozeman, says that it's encouraging to see the White House's involvement. We're committed to working together to find a solution to border security problems and other outstanding immigration issues. Okay, then we have Congressman Steve Womack of Rogers. He says, quote, I'm glad to see the White House take charge and lead from the front on this issue. I look forward to further conversations in the House about how we can continue to reform our broken immigration system. Congressman Bruce Westerman of Hot Springs said the White House's involvement, quote, absolutely will be helpful. Earlier this week, Westerman co-sponsored legislation that would address the issue and said there's a desire to move forward. Congressman Rick Crawford said that the changes are needed. Quote, increased border security must come first and foremost. Anything less, he goes on, would be encouraging illegal immigration without solving the root problem, our porous border. I am pleased to see that the president's initial framework seeks to address our border security problem and other harmful immigration policies while taking into consideration the circumstances of DACA designees. Congressman French Hill of Little Rock said the framework includes, quote, strong border security measures while also, end quote, while also addressing the plight of DACA recipients. He said he would work with colleagues in this administration on reaching a consensus that both sides of the aisle can agree upon. So those are the six. Those are the 6 members of our Arkansas congressional delegation. Those are our delegates that we send to D.C. to represent us and the 2 chambers. And they seem to be on board with this Trump immigration plan. What do you think? Let me know. Again, it is fascinating to watch the Democrats here reject the very thing they want. And I'm telling you, it's because they're thinking to themselves, if Donald Trump and the Republicans get credit for solving this, we're not going to be able to have the divisions and the victimhood versus the oppressor that we need to stay in power. And that's what you're seeing the media try to do. And that's why the State of the Union the other night was so important, because say what you want about Donald Trump. The Heritage Foundation says he had a very successful year, better than Reagan's first year. And regardless, the Donald Trump of the State of the Union a night ago was not the person the media tells you, is not the person the media presents to you as this is who Donald Trump is. The guy in front of that joint session was different than who the media says he is. We got to take a break. Don't go anywhere. This is Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell. Back in a minute.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Welcome to the Arkansas Obamacare Hotline. We would be more than happy to help you enroll in Arkansas Obamacare today. We just need a little information about you. Let's get started. If you're disabled, pregnant, or looking for medical care for your child, the program is currently full, and there's no doctors to see you. Please hang up now. If you're an able-bodied adult, please press 1. If you're currently employed, we're sorry, but you most likely do not qualify for the program. Please quit your job and call back later. If you don't work and instead play video games all day with your cats in your grandmother's basement, please press 1. If you've never lived in Arkansas, press 1. If you currently live in another state, press 1. If you recently purchased a home in New Jersey for $750,000, please press 1. If your current identity has previously been used by another person, was created before your actual date of birth, or doesn't really exist, please press 1. Congratulations! It sounds like you're the perfect candidate to receive Arkansas Obamacare. Please stay on the line, and a hardworking DHS employee will be with you as soon as possible. While you're waiting, feel free to relax as your ambitions to gainful employment fade away. PHP Parody. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Cook County, Illinois, Little Rock, Arkansas. Okay, welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Phone number 870-275-9799. So real quick, more on the national news. I found this interesting. Everyone is waiting for the memo to be released. Reports are it's going to be released today, but I don't know if that's the case or not. Anyway, it's supposed to really... Look, they say that, you had somebody from, was it the FBI or the Justice Department that read it, and then Andrew McCabe was immediately said, you're not coming back in the building. You're not showing up to work anymore. You're out. And so yesterday, Trey Gowdy said he's not seeking re-election, and in his statement, he said he'd be better served in the court system, in the Justice Department. That's what Trey Gowdy said. Okay? So, somebody on Facebook, Mark on our Facebook page, says that he's hearing Trey Gowdy might be the next FBI director. Wow, could you imagine that? Now, I've Googled, I can't find anything, but what an interesting idea. Maybe that's what's coming down the pike. Who knows? Let me see here. So coming up next hour, we've got a conservative future. We're going to be talking with a young conservative by the name of Kyle Boyd. We appreciate him taking time out to talk to us. And then I have got some news. I have got some news at the bottom of the next hour that you need to listen to, especially if you're anybody in the Marble Palace bubble. Really and truly, actually, this is probably more important for the folks because they're probably going to need to be calling the people in the Marble Palace bubble about this. Now, it is a speculation, but it has to do with ACE's work requirement. It has to do with withholding information from legislators so that you're going to get the legislative outcome that you want. Okay, and that's what's worrisome here. We've seen this happen before. And we need to start advancing this narrative because I'm suspicious. We should all be suspicious. It's called being an American. It's called having a healthy skepticism of government and those in power over us. It's really the most American attitude you can have. Back in just a moment.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM.
Is he in the system? That's not him.
KBTM, Jonesboro, and EAB radio station.
There's tons of different types of bot programs out there, and you can hook them into several nefarious Twitter accounts, and with a couple of clicks, you can start a process that has all those accounts vote for you. So, a particular bot program has all the nefarious accounts go ahead and vote for you. Now, again, They can even use a single account, and they can switch out IPs. Remember, Twitter records votes by IP. They do it by account, too, but they also do it by IP. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways, I imagine. And this is a problem with Twitter more than anything, that they allow this type of voting to take place. It really makes you wonder whether Twitter's polls have any value at all at that point. If they can be influenced by a botnet or somebody with a simple small program, I mean, can we actually count them as valid?
Wow. All right, so...
Same thing on Facebook, by the way. Facebook, Twitter, anywhere that there's polling in these social media platforms, there's a hacker who's found a way to get around that polling, and give you a skewed result. So I mean, it's a tough call, really.
So I know you're part of Citizens for Trump, okay? And so tell us a little bit about that organization. I have a follow-up question, but tell us a little bit about how you got involved with Citizens for Trump.
Sure. We started Citizens for Trump probably about 2 weeks after then candidate Trump announced he was running for president. And at that point, we had begun to form an online social network and an on-the-ground network of people to help fill in the gaps that we found early on in the campaign and all the way even up until the president was the nominee. So we did a lot of that volunteer work. We hosted several big events. We hosted the only pro-Trump event in Cleveland, Ohio, which Jan did attend and speak at. And we actually had to sue the city of Cleveland to have that event. They tried to make sure us and any other pro-Trump group could not do that. So we did win that lawsuit, and the lawsuit had to do with they were trying to set up a martial law zone about 3 miles wide from the convention center, which was, going to set a precedent for a political event. And we ended up, actually, the funny part is through the UCLA, we ended up suing them and winning probably after about 8 weeks of battling them locally. And they, of course, they ended up getting a constitutional judge who sided with us and decided to let us have that event. But that's where we started, and we've been going strong ever since. We've got several hundred volunteers in a couple of key swing states who are helping out many different candidates and, helping them with their game free of charge. Nobody at Citizens for Trump, including Jan, when she was our spokesman, gets paid. It's an all-volunteer network, and now we're about, I'd say we're about 3,000 strong on the ground in several different states. Right?
So my follow-up question is, Donald Trump, when he was running, specifically after he got the nomination, I mean, we had all these polls that showed that Hillary Clinton was going to win handedly. Handedly, for our listening audience, that word rings in my ear right now because of other stories. But we're going to win handedly, and so I guess the question, or she was going to win. What does this say about an establishment incumbent governor whose campaign Asa probably has no idea what he barely probably tweets himself. What does this say when he is, when they are so desperate that they're willing to just take an innocent college Republican poll on Twitter and essentially destroy it? And that's what they did. They essentially sabotaged what was not going to look good for Asa.
Well, and that was kind of my thought, too, Paul, is, did they really think that they were going to have this happen to the poll and nobody was going to say anything and Asa would just win? Or did they intentionally sabotage the poll, thinking that, okay, let them find out it was sabotage so we could, invalidate the poll completely? So I really don't know what the whole thought behind doing it was. I mean, it's really plain as the nose on our face that somebody skewed this poll with a botnet. But,
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us. This is hour number 2, and you have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine here, and we appreciate you listening. Just you listening alone makes you part of it. And if you want to contribute, you can give us a phone call or text, 870-275-9799. We're also broadcasting over at facebook.com/Conduit News, as well as conduitnews.com. So check out those websites. And I want to give a shout out. Was it Wayne, right? We had a caller called in, Wayne from Pine Bluff, who said he really enjoys listening to the program. And so, Wayne, we appreciate you listening to the program as well. And this sound means that it's time for a segment we like to call Conservative Future. It really is a time where we try to just interview young conservatives. Conservatives who are, kind of up and coming, are the leaders of the future and that sort of thing. Because I'll be honest with you, when I first got involved in this in like 2009, there just aren't very many young conservatives, because a lot of times when you're younger, you are liberal. I mean, when I was in college, I was liberal. That's just the way I was. Not a classical liberal, but, the kinds of liberal. I'm basically trying to pay a penance, I guess, for all my ridiculous thoughts in the past. But anyway, welcome back. Welcome to the program for the first time. We have Mr. Kyle Boyd with us. He's our guest today for our Young Conservative or Conservative Future segment. Kyle, welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you, Paul. It's good to be with you this morning.
Absolutely. I'm glad to have you. So talk to us, Kyle. Let's just start from the top. You're 29 years old, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, so you're 29. How did you develop a conservative worldview, and how did you arrive at this point?
Well, honestly, I've been conservative probably my whole life. I think, like you said just a moment ago, when I was in college, there were probably some times where I had a little more liberal-leaning ideologies at times. But I grew up in a conservative home. I grew up in you grow up in the South. Most of us tend to grow up, I think, in the South. Or traditionally have grown up in the South in more of a conservative environment. Grew up with a family that's, very Christian faith oriented. And so for me, it wasn't really a battle to become a conservative. It's always just kind of been what my family has believed and stood for, whether that be conservative socially and morally, or even politically and fiscally conservative. So it's just kind of always been ingrained in my DNA from the very beginning.
Well, that's good, and we hear that from a lot of folks, how it was their upbringing that led them to this point. And I always, when I hear that, sometimes I forget to say this, but I think if we have any young parents out there listening, that is something to certainly take to heart, and to not just hear, but to implement and realize how valuable a strong family and parenting and being intentional with your kids is, not necessarily so that they come up and agree with all of your views politically, but just, what kind of influence you do have as parents over your kids. And it's very, very important. Now, Kyle, what is it that you do right now for a living? I talked to you earlier. You're actually involved in you have two things that you do, right?
Yeah, I'm bivocational. In my secular career, I work as a CFO of ABC Block and Brick in Little Rock. We manufacture concrete masonry unit, and then in the other part of my world, I am on the pastoral staff at Turnpoint Church in Conway.
Wow, that's awesome. And so, how did you fall into the pastoral staff there? Was that what you were doing initially, or were you in the secular world initially?
Well, I've grown up in ministry. My family's been in the ministry, and I always knew I had a call of God on my life to pursue and to follow. Doesn't mean I always followed it as well as I should. There are times, when you're younger, when you're in college, you don't want to follow God always. Mm-hmm. But I got my secular degree and went to work. I started my career at a public accounting firm in Northwest Arkansas, and then became a youth pastor there at a church in Rogers, and then moved back down. I went to school at UCA, and so we moved back down. My wife and I moved back down here a couple of years ago. Started working in the church here, worked in some various positions, and now we oversee the youth and the college and young adult groups, as well as some other administrative things at the church. But it's been, like I said, I grew up in a ministry family, and just like my conservative values were always there from the very beginning, ministry roots and trying to follow after the will of God has always been, always been there in our minds of trying to follow what He wants us to do. So it's just, I don't know that I can say it was a moment in time where it was like, you got to do this, but God has just continued to open doors for us. We've tried to follow the best we could.
We're talking with Kyle Boyd. This is our Young Conservative segment where we kind of highlight future conservatives. So, Kyle, tell me about conservatism politically. When you hear that word in a political context, what does it mean to you? Because sometimes it can mean different things to different people.
Sure, absolutely. I think one of the best ways that I think of it is it's simplicity. I think the government should be limited to its most simple functions, to its most necessary functions, and then we should as Americans have the right to live our life and do the things that we want to do without the government interfering. So I think conservative is about making everything simple, about getting all the complexities of government and all that kind of stuff out of the way, and just living by common sense deals. Now we need government. Obviously, there are some things that we need government for. We need them to help provide the common defense and to do certain things. But honestly, when it comes to business, I work in a small business. Our company we have 9 manufacturing facilities. 8 of those are in Arkansas. 1 of those is in Louisiana. We're the largest concrete masonry unit manufacturer in the state of Arkansas. I want government to get out of the way so our business can grow, and so the simple things that government can do without getting in the way and convoluting the system, that's what I want. When I think of being conservative and having a conservative political view, it is trying to let the individual govern themselves to as much extent as possible and getting the government out of the way.
Yeah, I can't agree. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you are exactly right, and I'm really glad that you brought up the small business aspect of it. As being a CFO, I think you obviously see the money coming in, the money going out, the money going to the government, and so when the government comes back, I mean, specifically here in Arkansas, we have seen Republican-led legislature raise our taxes and attempt to raise them even more, and you stop and think, well, we're already giving you money to do these things. And if you would just fulfill the stuff that we all agree on, like building roads, instead, we come up with new programs and new ways of dependency, and it just gets frustrating. And I think they're mismanaging our money. Let me ask you this, Kyle. How do you feel about what it's the overwhelming philosophy today among our leaders here in Arkansas and other states as well? And it's what they call economic development. And in many cases, their definition of economic development is taking your taxpayer money that you're sending to Arkansas, and then they give it away to company A or B that's outside, and in most recent cases, a couple companies from China, and they get to come here with our tax dollars. And I'm just wondering, wouldn't it be better if we just eliminated the Arkansas corporate tax? and quit doing that and then just treat all of our existing businesses and let them flourish and reinvest. And we've already seen that with the tax cut, the giant corporate tax cut we got nationally. How many people got bonuses? How many, Apple investing all these billions of dollars? What do you think about that?
Sure. Well, I think economic development is a lot of times a fancy term to say we're going to take money out of successful people's hands and we're going to put it in the hands of people who are running businesses who couldn't make it without government coming in and subsidizing it. And usually that's because somewhere else down the road there's a payday for someone else who's helping them get that money. Our business, hey, look, the Arkansas Economic Development Committee is not coming out to ABC Block and Brick and saying, hey, how can we give you guys taxpayers money to increase your business? We're going out there every day and we're hustling.
Yeah.
We're finding sales and we're looking at ways that we can cut costs and increase our bottom line so that we can pay our employees. We have all together between our owner, we're a privately owned company, all between ABC Block and Brick and a couple other companies that we have about 300 employees all together, and we take great pride in being able to provide them with good livings and all that kind of stuff, and good benefits but yeah, we're paying money, and we don't mind. We don't mind paying our share on a corporate basis. Hey, look, we've got a fleet of about 40 big rigs and tractor trailers, and so we use the roads. We use these kinds of things, so we rely on those, and we have no problem with paying our share to help that kind of stuff. But when you're taking our money, and like you said, there's companies that are coming into Arkansas from China and from these other countries, and we're using taxpayer dollars to fund them and to help them succeed, but we're not taking care of our small business owners. We're not taking care of that. So I do think that there is a lot of mismanagement, like you said, of funds. And I'm not at the point where I want to say we need to get rid of a corporate tax rate or anything like that completely, because I do think we've prospered by the people of Arkansas, and so we need to pay our share to benefit those things. But the money that comes in, whether it's local or federal tax dollars that are coming in, there's gross mismanagement of funds. I'll just tell you this. I look at things like, for instance, the United States Postal Service, which constantly runs with a negative, in the red. And if ABC Block, if I ran the company like that, I either get fired or our whole company would go bankrupt. You know what I mean? So only the government is allowed to run fiscally irresponsible. Those of us out here in the small business world, we know what it's like. We know what it's like to make the hard calls and say, hey, the money's not here, or go through the recession. We're in the construction products industry, so during the recession, it hit us hard. And I know what it's like to have employees come to you and say, hey, I need a raise. I need to make more money so I can support my family, and to have to look at them and say, hey, right now is the time we're all making cuts. We can't do it. But now that the economy's back rolling again, now that the tax reform legislation has been passed out, our company's able to look at things and say, hey, we can give some of our we can do some employee bonuses and raises and things like that. We're better. The small business owner who's a successful small business. Now, there's people get into entrepreneurial endeavors who make big mistakes and don't know how to manage their own capital. But the successful small businesses like ABC Block and Brick, our owner, they can do a whole lot better with the money that they're earning and putting it back into people's pockets and investing in the economy than the government can ever do. And so let's make sure that small business owners, entrepreneurs, people that go out and have built this country on their backs. Our owner, for instance, he started as a 12-year-old boy laying block and brick with his dad in Whitehall, and now he's got the largest manufacturing, the largest concrete masonry manufacturing company in the state of Arkansas, and that's because he knew how to take his money and invest it and work hard and put it where it needed to go. The government didn't do that for him, and so I said all that to say this is there's a lot of mismanagement of funds. If we can put the money back in the hands of the small business owners, they'll do a lot better with growing our economic development for the state and for the country than the government will ever do.
Yeah. It's very, very, very well said. And I certainly appreciate your perspective, your point of view, Mr. Kyle Boyd, and I appreciate you coming on. And I just have one more point to make. And so I totally understand, and I think most people appreciate, we all want to pay our taxes and contribute and do everything. But back to the Arkansas corporate tax rate. If you did eliminate it, just so you know, I want our audience to know this. If you were to eliminate the corporate tax break and you were to eliminate the giving away of taxpayer money to these companies trying to recruit them here, it actually would just offset. If we would just stop doing what we're doing, you could give all these corporations in Arkansas a massive tax break.
Absolutely,
and it would actually offset. I mean, that's pretty incredible. And they're going to debate it. I hope they debate it down there and eventually move on it. But it's doable. The amount of money Arkansas gets off of the corporate tax rate is really not that much money. So anyway,
sure. And you're exactly right. There's always a trade-off, and we can, if we would reduce our wasteful spending, we could. And manage our finances as well as a state, we could reduce a lot of things for the taxpayer. Like I said, I believe in the idea of taxes. I don't think that we can have a tax-free state,
correct,
or anything. But you're exactly right on the idea of we could rearrange our spending. We could get rid of a lot of wasteful, mismanaged funds, and we could significantly reduce the burden on the taxpayer.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to meet you. I appreciate your perspective. I'd love to do it again sometime, so let's stay in touch.
Well, thank you, Paul. I appreciate the opportunity very much.
Yes, sir. All right, be safe. Folks, that concludes this edition of our Conservative Future segment. I want to get our spending under control as well. Right now, over the last 3 years and coming up on the fourth, under Governor Asa Hutchinson's leadership, we're looking at a $610 million spending increase. So we got to get our spending under control first.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage,
We've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody. Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so this is not being, I haven't found a headline on this at all, but I have a listener who I do trust, who texts into the show and just says that he has sources that are saying that that Donald Trump's really likes the idea of Trey Gowdy, who just announced yesterday that he's retiring from Congress, that Donald Trump loves the idea of a Trey Gowdy FBI head director. So Trey Gowdy being the head of the FBI, really likes that idea. Of course, you know, he's from, I mean, he was Trey Gowdy was a prosecutor. I mean, it would make sense. It would make sense. But anyway, I don't know. That's interesting. Again, you know, haven't heard it reported anywhere, but I mean, you know, it's not, you know, it's not like a far-fetched concept. So we'll have to see. So next up, coming up in the next half hour, we're going to be talking about a flashback. This is really good. We're also going to be advancing a new idea that you haven't heard about. What if Governor Asa Hutchinson, who's applied for a waiver with the Trump administration, hasn't gotten everything he wanted out of the waiver? What if he hasn't gotten everything he wanted? This was a waiver for Obamacare, Arkansas Works. Now, keep in mind, anytime what Arkansas is about to go through, whether we're going to reauthorize the funding for Arkansas Works or not, whether we're going to separate it out of the DHS budget or whether the Republicans are going to refuse, the establishment Republicans refuse, and then they start acting like Democrats saying, you're going to close down the entire Department of Human Services and throw kids out of, cancel Medicaid and throw people out of nursing homes and everything that they're going to do today. Are they going to go down that path? And I think they will because they've done it before. Or are they going to separate the funding and let's be done with this once and for all? Which is it? What if there's vital information, though, that's going to be held back and then released after the fiscal session? That is my speculation, and I'm going to get into specifics of what I'm talking about when we come back. At the same time, this flashback article from conduit4action.org, headline, Asa, better chance of advancing liberal program than a Democrat governor. Why? Why does Asa have a better shot of advancing a program than a Democrat governor? Because he's a Republican, and he can leverage his relationship to get Republicans to do something that they would never do if it was a Democrat. We'll talk more about this in this very interesting dynamic at the Marble Palace, which it is just fast becoming just a model of... I don't know, corruption, just a complete lack of trust. The folks are finally getting it. And I think Governor Asa Hutchinson's biggest problem coming up in this primary against Jen Morgan is the truth. And the more the truth gets out, I really think it'll be the worse for the governor and his reelection hopes. Back in a minute. Got the nomination. I mean, we had all these polls that showed that Hillary Clinton was going to win handedly handedly for our listening audience. That word rings in my ear right now because of other stories. But he was going to win handedly, and so I guess the question, or she was going to win. You know, what does this say about an establishment incumbent governor whose campaign Asa probably has no idea what he barely probably tweets himself. What does this say when he is, when they are so desperate that they're willing to just take an innocent college Republican poll on Twitter and essentially destroy it? And that's what they did. They essentially sabotaged what was not going to look good for Asa.
Well, and that was kind of my thought too, Paul, is, did they really think that they were going to have this happen to the poll and nobody was going to say anything and Asa would just win? Or did they intentionally sabotage the poll, thinking that, okay, let them find out it was sabotage so we could, invalidate the poll completely? So I really don't know what the whole thought behind doing it was. I mean, it's really plain as the nose on our face that somebody skewed this poll with a botnet. But, again, was it intentional to do that so they could invalidate the poll altogether? Well, we'll find out when I ask them to put the poll up again.
Okay, yeah. I mean, so, that's a good point. UCA College Republicans, they should just put up another poll. I mean, the president told...
If they agree that it was skewed, why not?
Yeah, exactly. And, I know that I talked to the president yesterday of College Republicans, and he said something weird went on, because when he went to bed at midnight, Jan had that 63% lead, and he wakes up at 5 a.m., and essentially the poll had flipped. And that is a very odd time for, a lot of Asa Hutchinson supporters to get up out of bed and vote. That doesn't make any sense. So,
well, if it's weird to him, he should have no problem agreeing that, one, either they should relaunch it and try to get a result that is true, or two, maybe they should do what we're going to do and challenge Twitter to shore up its security system to, possibly develop an algorithm that detects these bots and shuts them down from voting on polls or things like that. I mean, this is a programming problem for Twitter.
Yeah, definitely. It's a programming problem. We just got to make sure they don't know it'll help conservatives if they fix it.
Right.
Because then they're never going to do anything about it.
They'll never fix it.
Tim Saletti, I appreciate it. Thanks for being up with me this early, sir. Tim Saletti from Citizens for Trump. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right, Paul. I appreciate it.
All right.
Have a good day.
Okay. You too. Folks, we got to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, check it out. Here we go. This is a really good flashback article, and it actually has to do with a prediction by liberal columnist John Brummett. Conduit for Action commentary. If Asa Hutchinson had lost the election for governor in 2014 to Democrat Mike Ross, would the legislature have passed less conservative legislation, or, here's a surprising thought, more conservative legislation despite a Democratic governor? This was the general idea that liberal editorial writer John Brummett wrote about prior to the 2014 election. In his June 17th, 2014 column, Brummett wanted to let his liberal friends know an Asa Hutchinson victory for governor would not be as bad as liberals feared. In fact, he saw Asa as having a better chance than Ross for continuing Obamacare Medicaid expansion in Arkansas. The program provides health coverage primarily to able-bodied working-age adults who do not work. Brummett said Hutchinson would keep the big government program, even though Asa was trying to finesse the issue by being noncommittal. And he was being noncommittal. Asa deceived the people of Arkansas. He ran ads. This is why I think I can legitimately say he deceived the people of Arkansas. The people of Arkansas in the Republican Party found out that the words private option were synonymous with Obamacare. They found out. Asa knew they found out, which is why when he got into office, he changed the name Private Option to Arkansas Works, because according to him, it became politically toxic, where you couldn't even have a conversation because the words private option would come up. So Asa knew this. Asa knew that the people found out private options Obamacare, so he decides to change the name. So if you fast forward to the year 2014, before he was elected, he was running campaign commercials saying, I oppose Obamacare. He was saying, I oppose Obamacare. That's why Obama's trying so hard to defeat me. It's like Obama was, Barack Obama was trying real hard to defeat Asa Hutchinson. But he ran ads saying he was against Obamacare. The Republican base thought against Obamacare means against private option. But then if you listen to his carefully crafted language during the debates and stuff, he would say, well, we've got to watch the cost. And, the cost of the private option is very worrisome, but we're going to relook at it once I get in office. We're going to address everything. We're going to look at it. He would never come out against the private option. He would just say, we're going to look at it. So then he gets in and he keeps the program. But that's the history here. Okay, and so John Brummett was right. John Brummett was right. He was honestly assessing the situation, that Asa was just posturing. He was pandering to the right wing. This piece goes on, right wing, the Republican Party. Conduit for Action writes, we could write volumes on Asa's constant posturing and his use of carefully crafted language, but let's not stay on the subject. But let's stay on the subject of why Brummett saw Asa as having a better chance of continuing Obamacare Medicaid expansion. Why did he think he had a better chance? Brummett saw Asa as having the better chance of keeping the big government program because Asa could operate within the Republican Party to co-opt some Republican legislators to vote for it. Ross would not have had that leverage. Mike Ross, if he'd have won, he wouldn't have had that kind of leverage with Republicans. Brummett wrote this, quote, the debate about the private option form of Medicaid expansion has been a factor in the Asa advantaged inertia. Ross is fully committed to working as governor to continue the private option. Hutchinson says he'll do the right thing and that we need, to study this closely, this son of a gun closely. Discerning observers know that Hutchinson is simply trying to finesse the issue to keep his right flank from frothing. Discerning observers know he's going to keep the program after putting some conservative-seeming bow on it, renaming the program. As I've written, because it's true, Hutchinson could succeed more easily than Ross in getting a decisive few Republicans to vote for the private option. That lets Hutchinson get away with pandering to the right while also giving him implied credit for doing the right and pragmatic thing. I don't know. I wonder when Jim Hendren read that piece, I wonder if that's when he was like, John Brummett's right. Principles do get in the way of pragmatism. And I wonder if that's what led John Brummett to write that article on Jim Hendren, and where he's quoted as saying, principles get in the way of pragmatism. This piece goes on. Loyalty to a governor who is a member of your own party is a big factor. Conduit for Action writes, it is not just an Asa thing. You might recall in 2013, several Democrats who had voted for pro-life bills dropped their support for the legislation once Democrat Governor Mike Beebe vetoed the bill. Some Democrats just walked out of the House chamber to keep from having to vote on the override of Beebe's veto. Beebe moved some Democrats to the left on the abortion issue. Asa has moved some Republicans to the left on Obamacare Medicaid expansion. That is an undeniable truth, by the way, folks. Many of you legislators who might be listening to this right now, it is an undeniable truth that Asa has moved many of you to the left on this big government program. In fact, he is supporting people in primaries like Breanne Davis, who want to continue the program. And this is a pivot to the left. I want you to think about Donald Trump at the State of the Union saying, we repealed the individual mandate, a key component of Obamacare, and the thunderous applause, the victory, the relief, the sigh of relief that sort of tyranny is over for the time being, and our biggest issue is whether or not to continue a key pillar of Obamacare in Arkansas. You guys need to get over yourselves. Those of you who put your entire political career and you strapped it to this program, it's tough, okay? Tough. It's time to do the right thing. It's time to end this. It's time to separate the funding, and let's move on. Let's move on so we can actually get real tax reform, real regulatory reform. Let's cut the size of spending. Let's cut the growth of government, and let's actually give back more money to the people, a legitimate amount of money, not this $100 million or $150 million. It's just ridiculous. We have tied ourselves financially. We can't do anything budgetarily because we're committed to paying 10% of this program. Let me finish up with this article, and then I'll get to my speculation here in just a minute that I think you need to hear. Brummett's assessment of ACE's intention and his ability to pass big government legislation was correct, by the way. John Brummett was right in writing this article. ACE had a much easier time doing this than Mike Ross would have. And that fact, by the way, should expose all the Republicans, and maybe it'll turn some of these Republicans back. In 2015, Governor Hutchinson successfully delayed an attack on Obamacare Medicaid expansion by punting the ball down the road with a study which, by its very terms, was designed to continue the Obamacare coverage. It was called a task force. In 2016, Hutchinson got the Obamacare program extended indefinitely, giving it a new name, Arkansas Works. Brummett's 2014 observations raised the question: if ASA had lost to Democrat Mike Ross, would the Republican majority in Arkansas legislature have passed a more conservative agenda by sticking together against a Democrat? You bet they would. Yes. They would have actually governed like Republicans do in other Republican states. This seems likely. Looking at ACE's record, it's clear he has been able to work within the party to hold back conservative legislation, getting many Republican legislators to support taxes and growing government. And their scorecards reflect that, by the way. Their scorecards reflect it. That's why the majority leader, Jim Hendren, had to, in order to try to get people to keep towing the line, he came up with his own scorecard of scorecards because he wanted to grade his own paper because he's mad at independent organizations. Not just Conduit for Commerce, but the Family Council, the American Conservative Union, Americans for Prosperity. He's got to grade these scorecards because all these legislators followed him and his uncle, and their scores are abysmal when it comes to actual conservative policy. And they're thinking, we're not getting the praise. Well, that's because these groups are just scoring your votes. They're not scoring your spin. They're not scoring your carefully crafted language. They're saying this is what the bill was going to do, and you either voted for it or against it, and we support this bill or we're against this bill, and we're just scoring your votes. And they can't. You did this to yourselves, Republicans, who are upset with your scores. You did it to yourself. And you know what? That scorecard of scorecards, I mean, it was a joke from the beginning. I mean, it might have made you guys feel better in the Marble Palace bubble, but in reality, in the real world, back outside of that bubble, it's laughable. It's laughable, and it was only done to try to keep you guys in line. You've got to see that. That whole effort was only done to try to keep you guys in line. Anyway. Seems likely. All right, so for example, you can see this article attached to the CFA article in defense of Governor Asa Hutchinson. Not. It's a sarcastic line. Some people didn't think so that's why the not is added on there. But go read that, and you can see how Asa's advanced liberalism. Matter of fact, we may go check it out here in a minute. But let me get to my speculation. This is what you need to hear today. The governor has applied for a waiver for Arkansas Works. Supposedly it'll be work requirements, but in reality it's a part-time work requirement. If you work 40 hours a week at minimum wage, you'd make too much money to qualify for the program. we were supposed to already have work requirements, by the way. That's what they spun it as, and now we know for a fact that it really was carefully crafted language. It was work referral requirements, which sounded good and conservative, but most people, a lot of rank-and-file Republicans said, oh, yeah, we're doing the right thing, but then you found out, actually, no, it's just they're required to get a slip of paper saying you can go here to get job training or potentially apply for a job. I mean, it had little to no effect. It's abysmal. I think something like a couple thousand, a few thousand actually did it, and they championed that as a victory for their work referral requirements. 300,000 people are on that program, and like $4,000 or 4,000 or something. Actually, and they were like, "Yay! Look what we did. We're successful." No, that's actually called failure. I mean, that's really the definition of failure from where I'm standing. So he's applied for these waivers. Now, if you'll notice, go check the headlines, folks. Kentucky got their waiver, or at least they announced that they got their waiver. The state of Kentucky is getting a waiver. What did this waiver do? Well, they are asking to add work requirements that have all these loopholes to where you really still don't have to work. So there's really, in my opinion, there's no actual work requirements in the way that you're going to think of. Well, you're required to work. Well, no, not if you volunteer. Well, no, not if you do this or do that. There's all these excuses for not having to work on this program. And so it's carefully crafted language. There's no doubt about it. But what else is ASA asking for? Remember? He's asking that we move from 138% of poverty coverage down to 100% instead, which, according to the establishment, would require that they remove a lot of people from the program. I think like 60,000 people. Now, why do they got to remove people from the program? Well, because they finally admitted what conservatives, true conservatives, have said all along. We don't have the money to pay for these people. Here's the question, though, and this is a speculation. I don't know this definitively, but what if ASA is only getting part of his waiver? I want you to think about this, Republicans. What if ASA is only getting part of the waiver? What if he's getting everything he wants, except what if the federal government is saying, we're not going to let you move from 138 to 100%? Or maybe we're going to have to phase that in later, but we just can't let you move 100. We can't drop that. We're not going to give that to you right away. What if that is actually what's going on? And what if ASA knows it and ASA's keeping that information from you until after the fiscal session? Because you see, that's the whole thing. You're going to be asked to vote on something that possibly that you don't even know if you have the waivers for yet. Now, maybe he comes out and he gets everything he wants. It's possible. He can get everything he wants, and I'm wrong, and that's fine. This isn't about me. I don't care to be wrong. But I'm just wondering if he doesn't get the 138% decrease down to 100 and it's still left at 138%, then those 60,000 people aren't going anywhere. Therefore, this whole idea of savings and now we can control the cost is completely thrown out the window. You need to at least think about this. And the reason you need to think about this is because ASA has hidden information from you before. He knew the redeterminations weren't being done when he got in. He knew what a debacle it was when he got in 2014 in the 2015 session. And many people would not have gone along with Jim Hendren. They would have not have gone along with Jim Hendren's SB 96 that he claimed was going to end the program, which did not, because here we are. We still have the program alive and well. Under ASA, he got in. ASA got in. There were 250,000 people on the program, and under ASA, it increased 50% to 330,000. And now they've kicked 80,000 people off. But there were people on this program in New Jersey that bought houses for $750,000, and they're getting free insurance, among other places. He's kept this from you before. I mean, I think some people wouldn't have gone along with the majority leader, Jim Hendren, and his uncle, had they known that we were violating federal law and not doing redeterminations. Had they known that we had spent $200 million on software and the software didn't work, that we were not actually checking to see, because it wasn't, who cares? It wasn't financially advantageous for the state of Arkansas to actually curb dependency on government, because the federal government was paying for all of these guys. And the insurance companies, Blue Cross Blue Shield, they were happy to just keep getting $500 a month. For every person that's on the program, $500 a month times 330,000. Let's just keep this gravy train rolling. A taxpayer guarantee revenue stream to Blue Cross Blue Shield. He kept that information until it was exposed. in part thanks to Brian King. So the question is this. If he doesn't get all that waiver, and what I just said, the speculation I just made is true, and it's not 138, he's not going to get the decrease from 138% of poverty to 100. That means it's not going to be less expensive this next year, is it? You at least need to be asking the questions, guys. They're not going to talk to me. They're welcome to come on the program, and I just don't think they want to answer the questions. Like basic questions. Why is socialism bad, Asa? Go ahead and tell us. Governor Hutchinson, will you tell us why socialism is bad? No? Think about it. It'd be really easy to keep that information from you and then say, we've got, but if we had the information, if what I say is true, does that maybe change people's minds? Say, you know what, budgetarily, this actually doesn't make sense now. Because your conservative reforms, not to mention, there are going to be lawsuits if he does get his work requirements, if he does get his 138 down to 100, there are going to be lawsuits. And so Asa can say, well, I can't get what I want. We're going to have to just keep the program as is and keep leveraging future budgets and keep asking the taxpayers to pay what they're paying now, and we'll find a way to make them pay more because they already have. They've raised our taxes already. We've got to start organizing a defense here. And part of what this program is doing, broadcast across the state, and I'll just be honest with you, is attempting to participate in a psychological warfare kind of thing. Because the psychology behind this is down there at the Marble Palace, the Republican establishment tells these other Republicans that may vote one way or the other, they'll be fine if you just follow the leader. You'll be fine, just follow the leader. Folks, this medium is offering you a different perspective, and it's challenging you to think critically whether they have a D by their name or whether they have an R by their name. And unfortunately, right now, the tendency is if you got an R by your name, that doesn't just mean blind obedience. That may mean you need to question things even more. We've got to take a break. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell. Find out more at conduitnews.com. Watch us live right now at facebook.com/conduitnews. Back in just a moment.
iTex is your first choice for cost-effective IT services. Protecting your business means protecting your data. Are you tired of unpredictable and expensive spikes in IT spending? Using iTex will prevent downtime and loss of employee productivity and do it all with an affordable, predictable budget. iTex is the premier managed service provider for small and medium businesses. They help their clients put IT to work to earn your business more money, and you should contact them today for a free consultation. 870-336-9778. That's 870-336-9778 or itexusa.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas. This is for all you big government establishment Republicans out there. Hope you're listening. I keep a close watch on these votes of mine. I keep my finger in the wind all the time. I vote big government, and you will pay with your dime. 'Cause every time I toe the line. You know, there's always an excuse not to shrink government. It's much easier just to toe that line. I find it very easy to be rhino blue. I find I'm not alone when failing to come through. Yes, big government, I'm a fool for you. 'Cause every time I toe that line. Legislative sleight of hand would be an accurate description. Or you could just say, they can't quit towing that party line. As sure as night is dark and day is light, I'll vote big government both day and night. And act like I'm shocked when it all comes to light. 'Cause every time I toe the line. You know, the phrase toe the line is the equivalent of toe the mark, both of which mean to conform to a rule or standard. You could also call it the status quo. Tax and spend, I'm always on your side. I love writing government checks that I cannot hide. Buying people's votes always turns the tide. 'Cause every time I toe the line. The Oxford Dictionary word histories. The idiom toe the line, from an athletics analogy, originated in the early 19th century. I hope you don't watch these votes of mine. Hope you don't see through the lies and slime. 'Cause I plan on spending with your dime. 'Cause every time I toe the line. You know, toeing the line is what the folks down in Little Rock call progress.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, here we go. Listen to this. Hang on, yeah. Everybody wake up out there. All right, so Paul, it's a good name, Paul on Facebook. I believe Paul is from White County, but he's commenting on our Facebook Live thread, and he says, Trump killed Obamacare by ending its mandate. He changed the tax code to attract businesses to the U.S. When will Asa do the same for Arkansas? We need lower state taxes. Excellent point. Excellent point. I mean, if you really think about what Donald Trump is doing is not continuing the status quo. I mean, I think objectively you can say that he's not continuing the status quo. It was a big deal to end the individual mandate and to take the potential political heat of that undoing everything or having adverse consequences here or there. I mean, all of that's possible, but he did it because that's what you campaign to do. And you don't replace a fire with another fire. You put the fire out. That's what I'd like to tell Asa and the boys, is you don't replace a fire with another fire. We have to put it out, and we deal with the consequences later. But if you guys are all scared of the at some point, John Brumman will start writing negative articles about Asa. That will mean conservatism is actually being implemented, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Folks, tomorrow is Johnny Cash Friday. I'll see you here tomorrow, 6 a.m. Be safe, Arkansas.